Hi, my name's Mel and welcome back to my channel Bookish Brummy. So for today's video I thought it would be really good if we had a chat about what it is that I might read in December, given that we are now at the end of November and obviously I haven't really said anything about what my plans are for next month. So this month in November, one of the main focuses that I did was to do some mood reading, but I was also trying to hit off points on this reading challenge that I've been doing since the start of the year. Now, I've done pretty well on that reading challenge. There were 100 points on it, and I've now got 8 points left to cover to try and do in December. So that's like 8 books in December. And that feels like it doesn't really give me too much room to mood read exactly as I'd like. And I've got a lot of books that I want to read that don't necessarily fit the brief of the points that I've got left. However, we're nearly at the end of the year. We've got 4 weeks to go. So I'm going to, again, make that reading challenge the focus of December, so we'll try our best to try and finish off the list, but also do that in a way where I'm mood reading. So for a couple of the points I've got different options in my collection. So I'm just going to put on the screen now the list of the points that I have left to cover. So we can go through these one at a time and I'll sort of introduce which book I think it is that I might read to cover that point, or the books that I might read. But I also think that the way I'm going to approach this is, if I really don't feel like reading the book or hitting that point, I'm just gonna read what I like, because whilst I would like to finish this challenge, you know, I've read a lot of books this year and I think that it's very easy to give yourself reading fatigue if you start reading things that you are just not in the mood to read, or that you don't want to read. And I obviously enjoy reading, it's my hobby. So if I don't get to these points, I'm not going to beat myself up too much, because I think, like, at this point I've done 92 of 100 points, so that's really good going. I've read over 120 books so far this year, so I think that I've done quite well. And the fact that I've done 92 points of the list already means I've achieved what I've wanted to achieve by following this list, which was to broaden my reading and not just stay in the same genre and reading the same authors over and over again, which can be really easy to do when you've got your same authors that you like. But the point of me doing this is I wanted to find more authors that I liked, which I've definitely done with this challenge. And I think that like from last week, when I did the point on a sci-fi and read Isaac Asimov's a story collection of his, and absolutely loved it. It was so good, and I'd been a bit scared of the sci-fi genre, and I probably would never have read that book if I had not been doing this reading challenge and had to tick off a point about sci-fi. So I think that I really reaped the benefits of doing this challenge this year, and because of that I will do the challenge again next year. But I'm going to write the challenge points out myself this time. Now I kind of like know what I'm doing and what I want to get out of it, so that it suits my needs more and doesn't have things on the list that are probably not going to fulfill. For example, what I've got list on the list is a main character works in IT. That's a really difficult one to find. The point actually did start off as the main character does the same job that you do, and that was like impossible to find somebody that does my job, like the job that I do in IT. I could not find it anywhere. I searched the internet and the books just don't exist, so I had to change the point to main character works in IT and make it a bit more standardised. But even that was quite difficult. I don't think people really like to write fictional stories about characters that work in IT. So yeah, I'm probably not going to have that point on the list next year, but we'll do our best to cover it off in this next month. I also think as well that if I don't cover any of the points on this list, then, you know, we'll look at the reasons why. Why did that point just never appeal to me over the whole year? So for now, we're going to have a crack at it in December and we're going to do our best. So let's talk through the points and talk through what I might read for them. So the first one, I think one of the ones I'm most excited about, is the Women's Prize for Fiction winner. I have actually read a Women's Prize for Fiction winner already this year. I read Demon Copperhead, but I actually used that to cover off another point in the list, which was a Pulitzer Prize winner, because Demon Copperhead was also a Pulitzer Prize winner. So that means I'm not doubling up on points, like saying one book equals 2 points. I'm trying to do one book for each point. So I actually have 2 options in my collection to cover this off. So the first one is a book called The Glorious Heresies, and this is written by Lisa McNeely, McInerny. Sorry if I'm butchering that. But this looks quite interesting. I bought this from a visit to Book 66 that I had earlier this year, so I got it for a really reasonable price as well, and I'd never actually heard of it until I found it in Book 66. But it seems to be a gangster story with a bit of comedy behind it, which appeals to me. I quite like gangster films, and you know, the idea of like gangster comedy does kind of entertain me. So yeah, I obviously bought this because I was interested to read it, and it is a Women's Prize for Fiction winner. This was from 2016, so it's an older one, but that doesn't matter. So that's one option. And then the other one is a book that I bought a few weeks ago. I say a few weeks ago, it was probably about 6 weeks ago now, and I went to London with my boyfriend, and I said to him when we went to Waterstones, I want you to go and pick a book, any fictional book in this store that you think that I would enjoy. Because I like to do that sometimes and just see what other people think that I would like to read. And he did a really, really good job. So he picked Ruth Ozeki, and it's called The Book of Form and Emptiness. Okay, so this was the Women's Prize for Fiction winner in 2022. And as soon as I picked it up, I'd never heard of this either until he sort of passed it to me and said, oh, I think you might like this. And this is a more serious book from what I can tell. So I'll read the back of it so you get a sense of what it might be about. After the tragic death of his father, 13-year-old Benny O begins to hear voices. The voices belong to the things in his house and sound variously pleasant, angry or sad. Then his mother develops a hoarding problem and the voices grow more clamorous. So Benny seeks refuge in the silence of a large public library. There he meets a mesmerising street artist with a smug pet ferret, a homeless philosopher poet and his very own book, who narrates Benny's life and teaches him to listen to the things that truly matter. Blending unforgettable characters with jazz, climate change and our attachment to material possessions, this is a classic Ruth Ozeki, bold, humane and heartbreaking. So that really appeals to me, that story. I've never heard of this author before, so I can't say if this is classic her or not, but the fact that it's won the Women's Prize for Fiction award as well draws me to it, because I just think, you know, I enjoyed Demon Copperhead so much that if that is you know, an example of books that, like the standard of books that win that award, I can't see why I wouldn't enjoy this. So I've got the choice of two here, which makes it a bit easier to mood read to make this point on the list, so we'll see which one it is I actually get to. I don't foresee me not doing this point because I've been looking forward to this point all year, because I am actually really looking forward to these two books. So the next one we have on the list is Main Character Works in IT, so I'm quite limited as to what I can actually read for that. So we've got William Gibson's Neuromancer. This is actually part of a 4-book series, but I only have the one book. I thought we would start off with this and see how it goes. This is a really famous book from what I can tell in the sci-fi world. It's fairly old. It's been around since 1984. So, you know, it's obviously got longevity. So I sort of think that I would enjoy this, and I'm quite looking forward to reading it. Okay, so the next point I've got on the list is trending on BookTube. So I had a look through Goodreads, and I asked Goodreads what was trending on BookTube, because obviously, although I have a channel on BookTube, I do watch a couple of content creators on BookTube. I don't watch the whole of the content creators on BookTube, and I think like what is trending really depends on what kind of genre you're mainly reading. So you probably tend to watch videos from creators who read more in the genres that you read in, and therefore you wouldn't really see what was trending necessarily over all the content creators. So yeah, Goodreads had a list up, so I took that list and I had a look at my book collection to see did I have anything that was on that, and I did have one book on there, which was V. Schwab, A Darker Shade of Magic. Now I got this in the middle of this year because I had read V. Schwab's, or not read, I'd actually listened to it on Audible, Addie LaRue, and that was a really, really good book, and that was my first time being introduced to V. Schwab, so I'm quite interested in the other stuff that she sort of does. Now I'm not really into very high fantasy. That's not something that I've read a lot about, and a lot of her books seem to be kind of fantasy related. However, this one comes quite highly recommended, and it doesn't seem to be sort of with dragons and fairies, and there doesn't seem to be any romantasy element to it, which is another thing that I'm not really into in fantasy. So this one actually looks quite good. It says Kell is one of the last travellers, magicians with a rare ability to travel between parallel universes connected by one magical city. There's Grey London, without magic and ruled by the Mad King George III. Red London, where magic is revered and where Kell was raised alongside the heir to the Empire. White London, where people fight to control the remaining magic and magic fights back. And once there was Black London. ... So I actually think this sounds quite good, so this would be another good one to read. But I only got one choice for that. Then I have on my, I have Amazon recommended. Now, I'm a frequent shopper at Amazon, so to be honest, they recommend me quite a few books, so I could probably do, and I've probably got quite a lot of them on my shelf. But I sort of mentioned this one last month, that Needful Things by Stephen King had come up on my Amazon recommended, and I really want to be able to read a Stephen King in this month. I don't think I've not read a Stephen King in a month since I started reading him in March time. So I'm going through his back catalogue. As you can see on my shelves, I have his entire back catalogue pretty much, and I'm really enjoying reading those. So I do want to be able to fit him in this month. And as this one is Amazon recommended, this will probably be the one that I read. It's also quite a big one, so I foresee that if I take up this one on its own might take me a week to get through. So the next point would be a book that's been on my to be read pile for more than 1 year. Now I do have a few of those books. I mean, I'm quite good. I do read my books fairly fast, but I do have ones that are sort of collecting on the TBR for more than a year, and it's probably because I bought them for a reason, or and then for whatever reason I haven't been motivated to read it because I've probably bought something else that's sort of taken my attention, which I think is the same with most people who have like really big TBRs. So we'll start off. It's not that I'm not excited to read those. I've got like 3 different options that I've picked, and I think that this will, because it's gives me a range, I'm probably more inclined to cover this point because I can more easily mood read between the available books that I've given myself. So we've got The Murders at Fleet House by Lucinda Riley. I think this has actually been on my TBR for about 2 years now, and I bought this second hand after I'd read a book by her called The Love Letter, which was sort of a historical fiction mystery type thriller book, and I had never heard of her before, and somebody had actually lent me that book and I read it and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good, and I thought I'd really like to try something else by this author. Now she's quite renowned for her The Seven Sisters series, which I don't think is thriller. I'm not really sure what genre that is. It might just be like contemporary fiction rather than thriller, and that is a series I might like to try if I enjoy this. But I'm sort of in my thriller genre when I originally read The Love Letter, so this is why this book particularly appealed to me out of her back catalogue. So I would like to get around to reading this. It looks really good. The next one I have is Notes on an Execution by Danya Kufafka. Again, this has been on my TBR probably for about 2 years, and I originally bought this because I was in a book club and this was going to be the book for the month. And then after I bought the book, I was unable to secure a place in that monthly book group because they were oversubscribed, so they didn't have the seating. So to be honest, I was like, well, I'm not going to rush to read this because I can't discuss it in the book group, and I probably wouldn't have seen it otherwise if they hadn't suggested it. However, it does look fairly good, and I've seen a lot of people talking about this on BookTube who seem to like it. So Ansel Packer is scheduled to die in 12 hours, but this is not his story. Ansel doesn't want to die, he wants to be celebrated and understood, yet now he awaits the same fate he forced on those girls years ago. This is the story of the women who survive. As the clock ticks down, a mother, a sister and a detective reckon with the choices that culminate in tragedy, the impact on those in its wake and the possibility of redemption. So, you know, I don't think this is a particularly upbeat book, you know, but I think that it sounds like a really interesting book and probably quite an important book to read. So that's an option. And then I've also picked up The Long War by Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter. And the reason this one has been on my TBR pile for like 8 years, and the reason that I haven't got round to this is the first book I did sort of mention in a video a few weeks ago. I'd started but I didn't finish it, but the only reason I didn't finish it is because when I was trying to read it is when I had a concussion, which is quite difficult to read sci-fi when it's giving you some complicated concepts when you just have headaches and you have concussion. But I've never actually managed to get back round to that book, then forgot that I owned that book in various house moves and it had been sitting in a box with the rest of the series. Yeah, so that's why I've not got round to that, but now I've actually read the first one, which I used to tick off the point of Second Chance DNF. I did really enjoy that book, so I'd be happy to get round to the rest of the series. So I've given myself the option of this, so I've sort of got like a sci-fi fantasy on the list as well. Okay, then the next point is an Oxfam book purchase. So again, I have two choices with this. I really do like shopping in the Oxfam bookshop. I think that they have some really good selection in there. So I bought The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. So this is like more like a dark academia thriller from what I can tell. I think that Alex Michaelides has written 3 books now. The Fury and The Silent Patient is really, really popular. And I did read The Silent Patient before and I thought that it was okay. I don't think it was as great as people hyped it up to be, but I thought it was a decent story. But then I read The Fury and I wasn't entirely happy with that book. I read that back in the summer around about April. It was probably in spring really. It was about April time I read that book and I was a little bit disappointed in it, if I'm honest, but I had already just bought this from the Oxfam bookshop. So I'm going to sort of hope that this would be better. Let me know down below if you have read this and you think that it's good. So that's an option. And then another option is The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn. So I actually watched the Netflix dramatisation series of this and I thought that it was really, really good. And then I saw that there was actually a book that had been written obviously before the TV series come out. So I thought actually I'd quite like to read that. So the premise is, it's been 10 months since Anna Fox last left her home, 10 months during which she has haunted the rooms of her old New York house, lost in her memories, too terrified to step outside. Anna's lifeline to the real world is her window where she sits watching her neighbours. When the Russells move in, Anna is instantly drawn to them. A picture-perfect family, they are an echo of the life that was once hers. But one evening the scream rips across the silence and Anna witnesses something horrifying. Now she must uncover the truth about what really happened, but if she does, will anyone believe her? And can she even trust herself? And I remember in the series, it was very frustrating for her because she had witnessed what she thought was this crime across the road and nobody in her life wanted to believe her because she has these sort of mental health problems and she's on medication. People just kept dismissing her. It was really, really frustrating. So I thought it was a really good series. So yeah, I would look forward to reading that. Okay, and then we have romance as a genre. Now, I'm not that into romance at the moment. It's not really a genre that sort of does it for me. But I've got like 2 options. So I picked up I Heart New York, which was in my video the other week for a book that I've started but I didn't finish. I started this a very, very long time ago, back in 2014 or 15, maybe, like quite some time ago. And I quite like Lindsay Coutts' work. I used to really, really enjoy her books. They're sort of like comedy romance. So you have like a bit of a good time with it. And this one I remember starting, but I just never got around to finish it because my life was really busy at the time. So this is one romance I've got on my shelf that is a possible option. However, I still don't really feel in the mood for it, but that might change if I start it, so I won't completely discount that. It's there as an option. And I also found this book which had actually been given to me, I think, by my grandmother maybe last year, but I think she gave it to me right at the end of December. So I thought, oh, I'll save that and maybe I'll read it next December. One Day in December by Josie Silver. I've never read anything by Josie Silver before, but the story, like, it looks pretty good, I suppose. Um, it's about fate, really, from what I can tell on the back of the book. So she sees a guy on a bus that she likes and then decides, you know what, I'm just going to move on with my life and not think about it. And then I think fate somehow brings them together. But the fact that it's in a December story, like a Christmas story, it sort of might be the one Christmas book that I read in December. I'm not overly keen on Christmas books. I've never really found anything that was amazing, not like in Halloween. But I don't know, that sort of gives me like maybe a Christmas read if I want it, and a romance story. And then the final point on the list is a library book. Now, I'm actually going to have to go to the library and select a book, and I have absolutely no idea what I would select right now. So I think the way that I might play that is, if there's something that like I want to read and maybe I don't have it on my shelf, then I'll go to the library and do that, because that could be quite an easy mood read one, because it's quite broad, isn't it, library book. So really that could be any genre, any author, any type of story. So that one actually really shouldn't be too hard to cover off, other than I just have to make sure that I go to the library and select a book, and hopefully they have the one that I'd want. So that's all the points on the list. However, there are, other books that I have in my collection right now that I'm really looking forward to reading. And yeah, I'm not going to sit and present all of those here, because we would be here for hours. But a couple of ones that I really, really want to get to is Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who was watching my October videos when I was reading Halloween type books, because I'd read Interview with Vampire by Anne Rice, and I just really, really loved that book. And it, I rushed out and bought this because I really, really want to get into reading this. And it's a shame that it doesn't really cover any of the points in my list, but I really, really want to be able to read this before the year is out and then carry on with the series. So if I have a particular feeling like, yeah, I want to read that, I'm just going to pick this up and read it. Although I appreciate it's quite a thick one, so it would take a bit of time, and it might mean that I don't finish off other points in the list. But if that's what happens, that happens. And another book that I particularly want to get to is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. Now, the reason I sort of really want to get to this before the year is out is because me and my boyfriend selected a few books at the beginning of the year that we were both going to read, so that we could talk about the book together. And this was one of them. Now, my boyfriend actually really didn't enjoy this. It took him some time to get through, but he soldiered through and didn't do a DNF. I told him, do a DNF if you really don't want to read it, but he didn't. He read through it, so obviously he's waiting for me to read it so that we can have a discussion about it. Now, I really enjoy Fredrik Backman's work. I've read a few of his books now. I read Britt Marie Was Here and Apologies, My Grandma Sends Her Regards. And I thought both of those were really, really good. So I really want to read the Fredrik Backman catalogue, but I think the difference is I quite like books that do that are sort of led by character growth, and that are more about the character, and there doesn't necessarily have to be some kind of crazy plot going on. I like character-led novels, and I feel that Fredrik Backman's novels are character-led. Like, he writes some really interesting, complex characters, and it's all about their growth from the start of the book to the end of the book, and their interactions with other characters. And there is some sort of plot normally going on just to move the characters along, but it's really more about the characters than the actual plot, from what I can tell with his work, and I'm okay with that. I really enjoyed that with the two that I read. Whereas I think my boyfriend is more plot-driven person, which is why he found this maybe a little bit slow and difficult for him to get into. I did go on Goodreads and read the reviews on this to sort of get an idea of what people were thinking, and it's really split on there. You have some people saying like, I really, really love this book, and some people saying like that they're really bored with this book. So I want to read it so I can make my own opinion on it, and then obviously have a chat with him about that book. So that would be good if I could get that all marked off. It's just it doesn't fit with any of the points that I have to cover on the list, but that's fine. So I really do have quite a lot of options of things to read. At the moment I've been doing between like about 10 and 12 books a month. So there is the possibility to read these 8 books potentially and get in a couple of books that are not on the list. However, I think I just need to be a bit realistic and think some of the books that I need to read for this list are quite large, like the Stephen King one, so that could take about a week. And then also factor in the fact that we are going to be in the Christmas period, you know, so there's periods of time, like days, where you're not going to be antisocial and sitting there reading because you have to do stuff with friends and you have to do stuff with family and you're sort of going to work events as well. So there's quite a few evenings and days in there where I might normally be reading if it was a normal month, but obviously I'm not. I'm going to be out and enjoying the festive period. So I think that the amount that I will read in December will be a lot less than it has been, you know, in all of the other months, which is actually absolutely fine. But in that way, it does make me think getting these 8 books covered for the end of the year is probably quite a big ask, especially if I want to throw in some other stuff like Lestat that have got nothing to do with the list. But you know what, like, I'll just see what I can do, and I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I read to enjoy the books I'm reading, and you know what I might enjoy in 3 months' time might not be something that I want to enjoy now. So I'm not going to beat myself up if I don't do it. Anyway, let me know if you have read any of the books that I'm sort of proposing to read for December. Are there any that you would sort of say, yeah, I really enjoyed that, I reckon that you should try and read that one first? Like, if you can recommend that, just let me know down below in the comments. If you read any of these books on the list and you didn't particularly like them, let me know as well down in the comments, and a little bit about why maybe you didn't like them, because then I can sort of think about that while I'm reading it, and see how I feel about that point of view. So yeah, let me know what you're intending to do for December too, and hopefully you enjoy the books that I've showed you and you feel like you want to come and join me in December. If you haven't really seen anything on here that you think, oh, I'm not really interested in any of those books, so it probably won't join in with any of the videos, that's not to say that I will religiously read all these books. There could be other ones in there. There could be more Stephen King. There probably will be, because you know, I enjoy him, and I kind of probably want to sneak in some more Isaac Asimov because I really enjoyed that last one I read. But anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again on the next one. Bye!